The Lower Paleolithic era in the Korean peninsula began roughly 500,000 years ago. The earliest known Korean pottery dates to around 8000 BC, and the Neolithic period began after 6000 BC, followed by the Bronze Age by 800 BC, and the Iron Age around 400 BC. According to the mythic account recounted in the Samgukgusa, the Joseon kingdom was founded in northern Korea and Manchuria in 2333 BC. The Joseon was purportedly founded in 12th century BC, and its existence and role have been controversial in the modern era. The written historical record on Joseon can be found from early 7th century BC. The Jin State was formed in southern Korea by the 3rd century BC. In the 2nd century BC, Joseon was replaced by Joseon, which fell to the Han China near the end of the century. This resulted in the fall of Joseon and led to succeeding warring states, the Proto-Three Kingdoms period that spanned the later Iron Age. Since the 1st century, Goguryeo, Baekje, and Silla grew to control the peninsula and Manchuria as the Three Kingdoms until unification by Silla in 676. In 698, Joseon established Bala in old territories of Goguryeo, which led to the North-South States period. In the late 9th century, Silla was divided into the later Three Kingdoms, which ended with the unification by Wang Jian's Goryeo dynasty. Meanwhile, Bala fell after an invasion by the Khitan Liao dynasty, and the refugees, including the last crown prince, emigrated to Goryeo. During the Goryeo period, laws were codified, a civil service system was introduced, and culture influenced by Buddhism flourished. However, Mongol invasions in the 13th century forced it into vassalage, which lasted until the mid-14th century, when the Yuan dynasty began to crumble. In 1392, Yi Seonggye established the Joseon dynasty after a coup in 1388. King Sejong the Great implemented numerous administrative, social, and economical reforms, established royal authority in the early years of the dynasty, and promulgated Hangul, the Korean alphabet. From the late 16th century, the Joseon dynasty faced foreign invasions, internal power struggle and rebellions. Support from China, particularly militarily, became increasingly important to maintaining rule, and the dynasty maintained a strict isolationist policy to all countries except China. By the 19th century, with the country unwilling to modernize, and the decline of China due largely to European powers, Korea became subject to foreign powers. After Japan defeated China, a brief period of independence and reform occurred. This was known as the Korean Empire. However, this state was quickly dominated by Russia, and when Japan defeated Russia, they forced Korea to sign a protectorate treaty, and in 1910 Japan annexed the Korean Empire. Though all treaties involved were later deemed to be invalid, Korean resistance was manifested in the widespread non-violent March 1st movement of 1919. Thereafter the resistance movements, coordinated by the Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea in exile, were largely active in neighboring Manchuria, China and Siberia. Figures from these exile organizations would become important in post-World War II Korea. After the defeat of Japan in 1945, the country was divided into a northern area, protected by the Soviets, and a southern area protected primarily by the United States of America. In 1948, when the powers failed to agree on the formation of a single government, this partition became the modern states of North and South Korea. The Republic of Korea was created in the South with the backing of the USA and Western Europe, and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in the North with the backing of the Soviets and the Communist People's Republic of China, divided at the 38th parallel. The unresolved tensions of the division surfaced in the Korean War of 1950. While the war was quite costly and fortunes varied, ultimately the war concluded with the peninsula at its pre-war borders. The conflict ended with a ceasefire in 1953, but the two nations officially remain at war because a peace treaty was never signed. Both states were accepted into the United Nations in 1991. While both countries were essentially under military rule after the war, South Korea eventually liberalized, and since 1987 the country has had a competitive electoral system. The South Korean economy has prospered, and the country is now considered to be fully developed with a similar per capita economic standing to Western Europe, Japan, and America. North Korea has maintained military rule, but the system has evolved into a somewhat monarchical system with leadership passed hereditarily and a somewhat divine status is assigned to its rulers. Economically, North Korea has remained heavily dependent on foreign aid, and following the collapse of the Soviet Union, that aid fell precipitously, and the economic situation has been quite marginal since. Prehistoric and Antiquity period. Paleolithic. No fossil proved to be Homo erectus has been found in the Korean peninsula, though a candidate has been reported. Tool-making artifacts from the Paleolithic period have been found in present-day North Hamgyong, South Pyongan, Gyeonggi, and North and South Chungcheong provinces of Korea, which dates the Paleolithic age to 500,000 years ago, though it may have begun as late as 400,000 years ago or as early as 600,000–700,000 years ago. The predominant view is that the Korean people of today are not the ethnic descendants of these Paleolithic inhabitants. Neolithic. The earliest known Korean pottery dates back to around 8000 BC, and evidence of Mesolithic pit comeware culture or Jungimoon pottery is found throughout the peninsula. An example of a Jungimoon era site is in Jeju-do. Juman or comb pattern pottery is found after 7000 BC, and pottery with comb patterns over the whole vessel is found concentrated at sites in west-central Korea, where a number of settlements such as Amsadong existed. Juman pottery bears basic design and form similarities to that of Mongolia, and the Amur and Sungari river basins of Manchuria and the Jomon culture in Japan. Archaeological evidence demonstrates that agricultural societies and the earliest forms of social-political complexity emerged in the Mumun pottery period. People in southern Korea adopted intensive dry field and paddy field agriculture with a multitude of crops in the early Mumun period. Bronze production began in the Middle Mumun and became increasingly important in ceremonial and political society after 700 BC. Archaeological evidence from Songguk-ri, Dipyeong, Ajeomdong, and elsewhere indicate that the Mumun era was the first in which chiefdoms rose, expanded, and collapsed. The increasing presence of long-distance trade, an increase in local conflicts, and the introduction of bronze and iron metallurgy are trends denoting the end of the Mumun around 300 BC. Joseon and Jin State. Joseon was the first Korean kingdom, located in the north of the peninsula and Manchuria, later alongside the state of Jin in the south of the peninsula. The founding legend of Joseon, which is recorded in the Samguk-yusa and other medieval Korean books, states that the country was established in 2333 BC by Dangun, said to be descended from heaven. While no evidence has been found that supports whatever facts may lie beneath this, the account has played an important role in developing Korean national identity. In the 12th century BC, Gija, a prince from the Shang dynasty of China, purportedly founded Gija Joseon. However, due to contradicting historical and archaeological evidence, its existence was challenged in the 20th century, and today no longer forms the mainstream understanding of this period. The historical Joseon kingdom was first mentioned in Chinese records in the early 7th century BC. By about the 4th century BC, Joseon had developed to the point where its existence was well known in China, and around this time, its capital moved to Pyongyang. In 194 BC, King Jun fled to Jin State after a coup by Wiman, who founded Wiman Joseon. Later the Han dynasty defeated the Wiman Joseon and set up 4 commanderies of Han in 108 BC. There was a significant Chinese presence in northern parts of the Korean peninsula during the next century, and the Lelang commandery persisted for about 400 years until it was conquered by Goguryeo. Around 300 BC, a state called Jin arose in the southern part of the Korean peninsula. Very little is known about Jin, but it established relations with Han China and exported artifacts to the Yayoi of Japan. Around 100 BC, Jin evolved into the Samhan confederacies. Many smaller states sprang from the former territory of Joseon, such as Baiya, Okyeo, Dongya, Goguryeo and Bakya. Metallurgy. The Bronze Age is often held to have begun around 900–800 BC in Korea, though the transition to the Bronze Age may have begun as far back as 2300 BC. Bronze daggers, mirrors, jewelry, and weaponry have been found, as well as evidence of walled town polities. Rice, red beans, soybeans and millet were cultivated, and rectangular pit houses and increasingly larger dolmen burial sites are found throughout the peninsula. Contemporaneous records suggest that Joseon transitioned from a feudal federation of walled cities into a centralized kingdom at least before the 4th century BC. It is believed that by the 4th century BC, iron culture was developing in Korea as the warring states of China pushed refugees east and south. Proto-Three Kingdoms. The Proto-Three Kingdoms period, sometimes called the Several States period, is the time before the rise of the Three Kingdoms of Korea, which included Goguryeo, Silla, and Bakya, and occurred after the fall of Joseon. This time period consisted of numerous states that sprang up from the former territories of Joseon. Among these states, the largest and most influential were Dongbaya and Bubaya. Baiya and other northern states. After the fall of Joseon, Baiya rose in today's North Korea and southern Manchuria. From about the 2nd century BC to 494. Although records are sparse and contradictory, it is thought that in 86 BC, Dongbaya branched out, after which the original Baiya is sometimes referred to as Bubaya. Jolban Baiya was the predecessor to Goguryeo, and in 538 Bakya renamed itself Nambu-yo. Okyeo was a tribal state that was located in the northern Korean peninsula, and was established after the fall of Joseon. Okyeo had been a part of Joseon before its fall. It never became a fully developed kingdom due to the intervention of its neighboring kingdoms. Okyeo became a tributary of Goguryeo, and was eventually annexed into Goguryeo by Gwanggaeto Taiwang in the 5th century. Dongya was another small kingdom that was situated in the northern Korean peninsula. Dongya bordered Okyeo, and the two kingdoms faced the same fate of becoming tributaries of the growing empire of Goguryeo. Dongya was also a former part of Joseon before its fall. Samhan refers to the three confederacies of Mayon, Jinhan, and Byeonhan. The Samhan were located in the southern region of the Korean peninsula. The Samhan countries were strictly governed by law, with religion playing an important role. Mayon was the largest, consisting of 54 states, and assumed political, economic, and cultural dominance. Byeonhan and Jinhan both consisted of 12 states, bringing a total of 78 states within the Samhan. The Samhan were eventually conquered by Bakya, Silla, and Gaya in the 4th century. Three Kingdoms of Korea. Goguryeo was founded in 37 BC by Jumong. Later, King Taireo centralized the government. Goguryeo was the first Korean kingdom to adopt Buddhism as the state religion in 372, in King Sejong's reign. Goguryeo reached its zenith in the 5th century, when King Gwanggaeto the Great and his son, King Jangsu, expanded the country into almost all of Manchuria and part of Inner Mongolia, and took the present-day Seoul from Baekje. Gwanggaeto and Jangsu subdued Baekje and Silla during their times. Goguryeo later fought and defeated massive Chinese invasions in the Goguryeo-Sui War of 598–614, which contributed to Sui's fall, and continued to repel the Tang dynasty under several generals including Yun Gaesaman and Yang Manchun. However, numerous wars with China exhausted Goguryeo and it fell into a weak state. After internal power struggles, it was conquered by allied Silla Tang forces in 668. Baekje's foundation by King Onjo in 18 BC as stated in the Samguk Sagi, followed those of Goguryeo and Silla. The Sangwoji mentions Baekje as a member of the Mayan Confederacy in the Han River Basin. It expanded into the southwest of the peninsula and became a significant political and military power. In the process, Baekje came into fierce confrontation with Goguryeo and the Chinese commanderies in the vicinity of its territorial ambitions. At its peak in the 4th century in the reign of King Jeonchogo, it had absorbed all of the Mayan states and subjugated most of the western Korean peninsula to a centralized government. Baekje acquired Chinese culture and technology through contacts with the southern dynasties during the expansion of its territory. Baekje played a fundamental role in transmitting cultural developments, such as Chinese characters, Buddhism, iron-making, advanced pottery, and ceremonial burial into ancient Japan. Other aspects of culture were also transmitted when the Baekje court retreated to Japan after Baekje was conquered. Baekje was defeated by a coalition of Silla and Tang dynasty forces in 660. Silla. According to legend, the kingdom of Silla began with the unification of 6 chiefdoms of the Jin-Han Confederacy by Baekje in 57 BC. In the southeastern area of Korea, its territory included the present-day port city of Busan, and Silla later emerged as a sea power responsible for destroying Japanese pirates, especially during the unified Silla period. Silla artifacts, including unique gold metalwork, show influence from the northern nomadic steppes, with less Chinese influence than is shown by Goguryeo and Baekje. Silla expanded rapidly by occupying the Nakadong River Basin and uniting the city-states. By the 2nd century, Silla was a large state, occupying and influencing nearby city-states. Silla gained further power when it annexed the Gaya Confederacy in 562. Silla often faced pressure from Goguryeo, Baekje and Japan, and at various times allied and warred with Baekje and Goguryeo. In 660, King Mu-yeol of Silla ordered his armies to attack Baekje. General Kim Yu-shin, aided by Tang forces, conquered Baekje. In 661, Silla and Tang moved on Goguryeo but were repelled. King Munmu, son of Mu-yeol and nephew of Kim, launched another campaign in 667 and Goguryeo fell in the following year. Gaya was a confederacy of small kingdoms in the Nakadong River Valley of southern Korea, growing out of the Byeon-Han Confederacy of the Samhan period. Gaya's plains were rich in iron, so export of iron tools was possible and agriculture flourished. In the early centuries, the confederacy was led by Gyeomgwangaya in the Gima region. However, its leading power changed to Daegaya in the Goryeo region after the 5th century. Constantly engaged in war with the 3 kingdoms surrounding it, Gaya was not developed to form a unified state, and was ultimately absorbed into Silla in 562.